Hi, everyone. My name is Sean Dyer. I'm an assistant program director and clerkship director at Cook County Health. Today I'm going to talk to you guys about our educational innovation, the use of infographics for medical student clerkship evidence-based medicine presentations. I have no financial conflicts of interest to disclose. So traditionally, on a lot of medical student rotations, there is some sort of evidence-based medicine presentation that occurs. This can be more informal on rounds or more formal around a round table with a group of learners with PowerPoint presentations, handouts, and such. Our clerkship tends to do the more round table formal presentation about halfway through our clerkship. We found about halfway through this session during the day, the room started to look like this. So we started to find or look for a more creative, innovative way for students to share their information and interesting topics that would maybe engage the audience a little more. So what we started to do was give the students two options. One, they could present the topics with the traditional format, usually was in about 2 or 3 questions about a certain topic that was researched and then presented, or they could use infographics, for example, the one on the right. They were given examples of both kinds of presentations. They referred to 2 free programs in order to create the infographics, and then present them on the day with the entire group. Over an 18-month period, we had 92% of students choose the infographics. It's only 8% with the traditional format. And in talking to students, they really enjoyed creating the infographics. They found the programs very user-friendly, found the infographics easy to create, and actually enjoyed listening to their colleagues' presentations more using the infographics. Very few had any exposure to them previously, but definitely planned on using them in the future. Most recently, I had one of our current interns come and talk to me. She was a former student, had done an infographic on cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome, and while on her internal medicine rotation, shared it with her colleagues and referred to it when taking care of a patient on the floors. Here are a couple of examples that our students have done. As you can see, there's a wide range of clinical topics that are covered, from ascites, packers and stuffers, animal bites. Also, people talk about non-clinical topics such as violence in Chicago and implicit bias. There is little research on the use of infographics in undergraduate medical education, but by no means are these new to medicine. A lot of medical journals have started to use visual abstracts or infographics to sort of disseminate their knowledge from some of the articles. Here's a recent tweet done by Academic Emergency Medicine highlighting a recent article. And they've actually found that when they share a visual abstract or an infographic via social media, it's 8 times more likely to be shared and also 3 times more likely to be read. The British Medical Journal started to use these with increasing frequency to even have a tab at the bottom of the article to refer to the infographic for that specific article. And they actually create a lot of infographics for the articles. Here's a little snapshot of what they say on their website, basically saying that they hope these infographics help highlight the key messages. They're easy and quick to use, and they help you remember the information that they contain. There was a good study done by the Canadian Journal of Emergency Medicine looking at articles that were shared on social media either with a visual abstract or just a standard text link. They found that those shared with a visual abstract or the infographic were much more likely to be viewed, and it was actually statistically significant compared to the standard version of sharing. The amount of full text views was not very different, but the change in the metric scores was statistically significant between the 2 ways of sharing the articles. In addition, a lot of emergency medicine residencies are starting to use infographics to sort of display unique characteristics about their program. Here's a very well done one by the Temple Emergency Medicine Residency, highlighting women in their program. Additionally, a lot of blogs are starting to use them to sort of summarize some of their blog posts and convey some key knowledge from their websites. These are done by emergency medicine docs, and you can see thyroid emergencies in TK and HHS, and actually draw some readers in to not only learn some of the basics, but then go and read the blog post for further detail. So where do we go from here? Well, we've sort of already seen journals using these to increase their readership. Emergency medicine residencies are using it to sort of highlight parts of their program, and blogs are starting to use it to disseminate the information. But where are we from medical education? I think that sort of our 18-month study period showed there's definitely a preference for infographics, but we don't know yet if it increases any knowledge translation, retention, or comprehension. So I think that's what we need to look at next. Does infographics or visual abstracts tend to increase these aspects of learning compared to the traditional modalities that we're using today? Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the presentation on the learning installation. My name is Dr. Jonathan St. George. Just to let you know, I have absolutely nothing to disclose, so we can move on to the presentation. So just to give you a little bit of background, I am an emergency physician in New York City working at Weill Cornell Medical Center, and my focus has really been on med ed innovation, particularly around the intersection between digital and physical space, and applying design thinking to help learners meet the challenges of 21st century learning in medical education. This innovation really came about through my development of a 2-day large airway course that we give and offered not only to our emergency medicine residents, but faculty, fellows in pulmonary critical care, pediatric emergency medicine, and many others. And it's become quite a successful course. 3 years ago, we decided to do away with the traditional format and seek out a new way to do things. So what was our objective? Well, we really wanted to create a robust and resilient learning delivery system that used both digital and physical space to teach complex, interrelated concepts and skills to enhance knowledge translation to the bedside. And to do that, we decided to seek inspiration far outside of traditional medical education. The inspiration for this really came from my deciding that I was really tired of the traditional way we were teaching, even though it was fairly progressive with small groups and interactive sessions and simulations. And it came about as I was walking through the Metropolitan Museum of Art here in New York City, and we're fortunate enough to have such an amazing cultural center here and have all of these museums. And I was walking through one of these exhibits with the lighting and the large objects of art and the huge graphic design typeface that was on this beautiful walls with audio to sort of guide me through the space. And I just realized that this was just an incredible way of learning, and I was really surprised to think, I don't think I've ever seen this in medical education. So I set myself the task of trying to figure out a way to replicate this using low-cost, off-the-shelf technology for medical education. And that really started me off with the development process. So the first part of this process for me came about by the development of what I call the interactive poster. So just using simple Keynote software on my Mac, I started working to design graphic interactive posters that had QR codes embedded in them, and you can see one of them here on the poster on the left about BVM optimization. And the idea was that these posters would provide not only visual cues, but also important written information and memes and other important core knowledge on the poster themselves. And then embedded within the QR code was digital content that we placed on a website that was filled with all the digital content in the curriculum for the course on specific topics. So what would happen was you would click on that QR code and you would move right from the physical space into the digital space and have the opportunity to listen and learn, whether it was a concept or a skill or a procedure. Once you're done with that interactive poster and taken that knowledge, if it was a procedure or a skill, you could then actually take it to our training labs. As you can see here on this slide, there's a person in one of our training labs. After they've clicked on the poster, they still have their headphones in, and they're listening and being guided through the process of performing the procedure, in this case, a supraglottic airway placement. And the beauty about this was that it was really a no-stress, judgment-free zone. This was their opportunity to practice in person or in groups, to guide each other, to learn from their mistakes without any judgment or without any faculty looking over their shoulder. When they were done with that, we then integrated what we called coaching stations. These were specialized stations within the space that had faculty experts that were available for someone to come by and sort of use the space as a flipped classroom and come up and say, hey, I have my technique. I'm going to show it to you. Can you give me feedback? The final part of these learning spaces or these learning installations was really we integrated then a sim challenge into the space. So once you've explored all the content within the space, you could then take all that knowledge and sign up for a simulation session that would happen throughout the day, and then with your partners or your team members, and then go ahead and take the simulation and get feedback. So this process was really the concept of transforming a space using simple off-the-shelf technology like QR codes and mobile devices, poster design, and then familiar interactive stations for procedures and deliberate practice, as well as simulations, to create a uniquely immersive, interactive, and self-directed learning experience that people could customize and walk through at their own pace. So, what has our experience been using this? Well, we've implemented this now over the last few years in multiple situations, most notably, of course, in our large 2-day airway course where we have over 100 emergency medicine residents and fellows and others joining. We've also used this for our transition to residency program, teaching fourth-year medical students and interns airway skills. We've used this to teach PAs, we've used this to teach faculties, and overall our experience has been that it's been an incredibly positive one for learners. So in terms of just collection of feedback, we did a survey at the end of every single one of these, and what we find is that students and learners feel that they can adapt really quickly to this learning style, that it's really, really easy to pick up. There's a lot of enthusiasm for people who have taken it, for wanting more. Faculty love it because instead of talking at students, they get to actually have students just come up to them, and instead of saying, "Hey, let me show you something," they say to the student, show me what you've got." Learners really find that this allows them to be active and engaged. These stations are open usually for a whole afternoon or a day, and people, if they need to take a break 15 minutes in, they can. If they want to take a short lunch break or work through lunch or power through the entire day, they can do whatever they choose, and they can really customize their learning too to make it high yield, because we usually have more than one installation open at a time, and they can walk through each theme-based installation on any topic and pick and choose what they think they need to learn. And then they can test what they've learned in a simulation challenge. And they can even then come back into the space after they've done the simulation and gotten a debrief and some feedback on their skills, so that they can then go back and customize their learning even further and go back to the stations where they felt they had trouble. All right, that's a brief introduction to the learning installation. There's so much more to talk about, but I don't have time here, so I'll answer any questions at the end of this. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Josh Baugh. I'm the Associate Medical Director in the ED at Mass General, and also finishing up a fellowship in both administration and disaster medicine. And I want to talk to you today about an innovation that we use to handle the absolute avalanche of information that all ED providers face early and even continuing now during the COVID-19 pandemic. My disclosures are that some funding for this project came from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. This work was also completed in conjunction with Ideas 42, who is a behavioral science consulting firm that is nonprofit. And I can confirm that I have no financial relationships with any of the other software presented during this talk. So back in February of 2020, maybe we can all remember we didn't have to wear masks in the ED. Things might have looked like this, and we started getting headlines and headlines and headlines and headlines and more information about COVID coming in at really an astonishingly rapid pace. And then we started getting studies like this one and this one and this one and this one and this one. And this became a lot to handle. And if you were like me and everyone else in our ED, your inbox maybe started looking clean like this, and then you started getting update emails and more update emails from people like me, and more updates and specific updates and other kinds of updates, and just more and more emails telling you how to change your practice related to COVID, what we knew. It all became a little bit much. And so we started doing things we hadn't done before, like having our physician administrative team round in the ED twice per day, telling people the latest information. We had a lot of Zoom sessions, educational sessions with our residents, with our attendings, multiple times per week. I gave a lot of presentations at faculty meeting, updating people on the latest COVID numbers and giving reminders. And we even had a Google Drive with all the latest documents, policies, and procedures for people to try and access relatively quickly. But a few months into this, we realized this was just not going to be tenable for what was turning into a much longer pandemic than I think any of us were hoping it was going to be. And so we set out to find a different solution that would solve some of the problems we have and hopefully cut down on the amount of time it would take to update clinicians on the latest, while also making it easier for them to do so. And so we had the following design priorities. So one, it needed to be easy to access. A lot of our sort of clinical information is linked to the EMR and is a little bit clunky, is hard to find during shifts. And we wanted this to be seamless for our providers. It needed to be up to date. We know that week to week, even day to day, things were changing at such a pace that yesterday's information was no longer valid today. And so it needed to be very current. It needed to be low maintenance. I was the one mainly maintaining it, and I wasn't going to be able to keep everything up to date if it wasn't easy to do. And finally, it needed to be adaptable because we didn't know where things were headed with COVID. And so we knew it might need to change depending on what happened next. So the solution we came up with was QR platform based. And so what we did was we created a QR code that's linked to a simple website, which I'm going to show you. But we put up these posters all over our ED in sort of strategic locations where we thought people would scan them, acknowledging in the language that, yes, our COVID protocols were changing a lot and it was challenging. But here is a solution that is easy for you to access to get what you need. And then we also put tiny QR stickers on the corner of the computer, every workstation in the ED, both for physicians and nurses, to try and make this sort of in people's faces and really easy to get to. This is what it looked like when you scanned the QR code. You would get to this very simple website with one button for nursing, one button for providers, and then it would take you to this page with just the latest guidance in headline form. When you clicked on one of these, it would open up just a little bit of information, either in a graphic or just a few bullet points that would give you only the information you needed on your shift to take care of whatever task you were looking to take care of. And then we would limit that to only 8 or 9 bullet points to try and avoid overloading people with information. And then we also had a standard guidance portion at the bottom with dot phrases, the testing algorithm, and things that were a little bit more durable and that we thought people would want access to. And so did people use it? Not surprisingly, in the first month, we saw the most use, as with anything new. But what we actually found was that when we implemented this, COVID cases in Massachusetts weren't that high. We were in a lull. And so interest waned a bit. People were logging in some. But as cases started to come back and as protocols started to change and as our clinicians needed the information during shifts, we found that use went up, sort of trending along with COVID cases, which I think makes sense. And seemed to tell us that people found this information useful and they were accessing it as they needed it as COVID cases were going up. And then fortunately, as we've seen cases going down more recently, we've also seen people accessing it less, which makes sense. So going forward, this has been quite different from the way that we display the other information that people may need in RED. And so we're starting to think, what else could we use this for? What other kinds of information might we put in this more readily accessible format, be it rare procedures, consults that aren't called as frequently, things that people might not remember how to do but need to know how to do relatively quickly when they come up. And so we're considering, how do we use this kind of platform for those sort of use cases going forward. And so with that, I want to thank Ben White, who was my physician mentor in this project, as well as Ideas 42, who were wonderful colleagues in helping us to develop this. And with that, I thank you for your time, and I hope you have a good day. Bye.
Thank you for the opportunity to present our project titled Ambient, Augmented Artificial Intelligence in Emergency Medicine, Proof of Concept in Pediatric Resuscitation. I have no relevant conflicts of interest to disclose. The emergency department is a complex environment with greater than 150 million annual ED visits. This emergency department microsystem is a part of a larger healthcare system, and at the center of which lies the patient, and just about every action that we take requires decision-making. Many of them require diagnostic decision-making. However, there is an inherent risk with decision-making, especially with diagnostic decision-making, which has recently been recognized by the national academies as a term used called as diagnostic errors. The causes for diagnostic errors in the ED are multiple and are shown on the slide. Indeed, compared to treatment errors, diagnostic errors are insidious, poorly understood, and poorly investigated. They account for greater than $100 billion in healthcare costs annually. Simulation is a proven method to enhance decision-making by training providers in a safe environment. On this slide, I want to introduce 3 concepts. First is augmented reality, which is enhancing the real world with digital images, usually through external devices such as the HoloLens, as shown in this picture, or even via smartphones. Second is the concept of artificial intelligence, which is to enhance the provider's clinical decision-making by the use of clinical decision support systems. And finally, ambient intelligence, where the entire environment is sensitive and responsive to people. Here, where you can see sensors, robots, electronic health records, all are seamlessly integrated with one another to enhance decision-making. So the question we wanted to ask, can augmented artificial and ambient intelligence module enhance clinical decision-making? And we wanted to prove this by using simulation. And we wanted to demonstrate, is it effective? Is it efficacious? Is it safe? is it feasible and can it be integrated seamlessly into clinical care? So here we are showing the ambient augmented artificial intelligence module where you can see the information on a PALS card is simultaneously visualized on multiple devices, one on a TV monitor, on a virtual screen, on a laptop, and the smartphone. And then the way we are testing is by performing a randomized controlled trial where we have developed this proof of concept application and we want to demonstrate its efficacy as an innovative cognitive aid for teaching pediatric resuscitation on demand and seamlessly integrate in real world care to improve patient outcomes. We have a couple of secondary aims. One is acceptability, and we also want to demonstrate whether this module itself adds cognitive load. Our study design is shown on this slide. We are enrolling 40 EM residents in their third and fourth year of residency. And the study design includes getting a baseline measurement related to their working memory capacity and measuring their heart rate variability and skin impedance by using an Empatica wristband. We then ask them to view a relaxing video. Following that, we onboard them with the module so that they recognize how to operate the module. And then after a break, we randomize them to the module or using a routine cognitive aid such as a PALS card. And this entire thing takes around 20 minutes. On this brief video, I'm going to walk you through how the module works. And in the second half of this video actually demonstrates how we have used this in the simulation center.
So up in our top left, we have our medical bot. It's like an AI assistant. And we're also seeing the interface mirrored on that left side that Jesse is seeing, who is remotely operating this from his home right now. And he's wearing a HoloLens 2, which is why you can see that virtual screen in front of him. And then he's holding on to a small portable device called a Duo that actually has 2 screens in front of him. And we're actually seeing both of those screens right now on the screen so that it's easier to see. Jesse, why don't you go ahead and take us into the program? You'll notice there's a slight lag in the video feed in the bottom coming from the HoloLens. The other data is coming through in real time. All right, so breathing is spontaneous. You have the scenario, Jesse, so why don't you go ahead and just take us through. So obviously this is meant to be done next to a mannequin in a real simulation center. Excellent. You notice that we've got some really nice things in here, like you have to hold to confirm some steps, so it's a lot harder to make mistakes. Over on the right, he's actually capable of seeing everything that he's done, like in a living timeline. And some of the nice things about this is because it helps you estimate the weight or enter the real weight, it automatically takes care of your dosage and then uses those timers to keep you on track. So you can see right now, it looks like in about 1:15, Jesse, you're gonna have to ask someone to change the compression provider. And we're about 1:26 from a pulse check right now. You don't need all of these devices. So you can use it just off of any sort of handheld device, like what Jesse has, iPad, phone, anything. You can use it off of any sort of computer. You can also use it in tandem. So imagine that there's multiple people in the room, one person wearing a headset, one person holding a device, someone holding a computer. The idea is kind of like the bridge of a starship. Everyone can work together on the same kind of data model.
In this, we are demonstrating the resident using the system in the sim center where the resident is directing the confederates to perform required and subsequent actions for the PALS resuscitation in this cardiac scenario. Here you can see the virtual screen. Here you can see the confederate using the Braslow tape, which then will be used by the resident to input the weight and accurately. That way the doses subsequently get calculated automatically in this system.
So up in our top.
So where we are with this is we have used the input from residents and faculty to pilot test the module. This has taken nearly a year of development, and to date, 8 residents have been enrolled in the randomized controlled trial. So in conclusion, it is feasible to develop an ambient augmented artificial intelligence module for pediatric resuscitation, and we were able to integrate it in the clinical care in the simulation scenario with minimal onboarding time, and we are using to enhance clinical and clinician training. And in future, we hope to use this in real-time care with multiple users. I want to thank my collaborators and to SAEM for allowing me this opportunity.
All right, good morning, everybody. My name is Micah Ambrose. I'm a PGY3 emergency medicine resident, and I'm here to discuss decreasing ultrasound probe damage, an innovative 3D printed solution. This was done in conjunction with Dr. Jacob Barnick, the Director of Emergency Ultrasound at St. Barnabas Hospital in the Bronx. Emergency departments are fast-paced areas of organized chaos. Point-of-care ultrasound, or POCUS, is a mainstay tool for rapid evaluation, diagnosis, and dispositioning of patients in the emergency department. The chaotic environment of the ED challenges even the most durable equipment. Equipment failure is costly to repair and leads to delays in the evaluation, diagnosis, and dispositioning of patients. This costs patients, faculty, and the hospital system both time and money. Our purpose was to identify the most common damages to POCUS machines that led to equipment downtime and determine a cost-effective solution. Using the Plan, Do, Study, Act model, we conducted a quality improvement study to investigate and decrease the downtime associated with POCUS cord damage. Location is the emergency department at St. Barnabas Hospital in the Bronx, and we discovered there have been over 4 probes replaced directly related to cord damage in the last year. We identified potential causes of this damage as a significant factor in POCUS downtime. Specifically, while maneuvering the ultrasound machines, probe cords were run over or caught within the caster wheels, leading to noticeable damage, requiring work order placement and downtime of the probe and/or the machine. The Phillips solution was to get their cable management clips. Unfortunately, the rubber elastic straps are not durable enough for the ED. Here we can see some of the strain retention systems of the ultrasound probes have been removed from their casing. This can cause exposed wiring and a potential shock hazard to patients. On the right-hand side, we see that the Phillips retainment straps are in fact being used. However, if you look closely at this image, you can see that the cable is actually wrapped around the braking system. Whenever this ultrasound machine was being used, it got caught up in there, and it can cause significant damage to the cable as it gets wrapped around and dragged around the caster wheel itself, as you can see here. Commercial caster guards are cost prohibitive in our resource-limited hospital and cost over $200 for 4 protectors. Ultimately, we sought to develop a novel wheel guard specific to our machine using 3D printer technology. We used Autodesk Fusion 360 to design a model of a wheel block and ultimately slice that model in Ultimaker Cura and print it in an Inter 5 Plus filament, or using PLA filament. On the left, you can see that we took multiple measurements of the caster wheel and used those measurements to design, on the right, the wheel itself within Autodesk Fusion 360. Once we had a model of the wheel, we then used that model as a test bed for production of a wheel block, as you can see here. On the left is the design of the wheel block, and on the right is the wheel block itself. The wheel block was designed to fit snugly, but not too snugly, on the wheel itself. This allowed the wheel to push the wheel block around without actually sitting on the wheel block. This wheel block does not have any weight-bearing effect on it whatsoever. It actually is just pushed along on the ground with the ultrasound's movement. We then printed multiple models, as you can see here, and we tested them out. And this is the fit. And as you can see, on the back end, the wing of the wheel block blocks the braking system from collecting the cable. And on the front side, we have a bevel that is supposed to help us get over small lifts and other obstacles, while also keeping the cable out of the wheel well itself. Here is a demo of our cable, or our wheel block, that pushes the cable out of the way as it is going around. You can also see that the cable does not get caught up as we are trying to track it into the braking system. All right, as you can see, the study is not without its hiccups. The wing on the left image was broken off. This was due to the fact that it caught underneath the ultrasound. There was a piece that was not measured previously. So the height of these wings were a little too high. And on the right side, if your emergency department is as old as ours, it has additions upon additions. And this is where 2 floors meet in an addition. And this metal plate causes a lip that prevented the original wheel blocks from going over it. Our new addition, we created a smaller height in the wing. It's barely noticeable, but it's there, as well as a little thicker wing itself. And on the front side, we created a larger bevel that allowed us to place some cleverly engineered wheels, so to speak. We use a 3D printed axle with 3 washers, and those wheels, the washers, are then covered with another 3D printed piece of material, just like so. And this system actually allowed us to traverse the metal plate that connected the 2 floors. Ultimately, a 3D printer model was designed using Autodesk Fusion 360, sliced with Ultimaker Cura, and printed on an Ender 5 Plus 3D printer using PLA filament. The guards prove effective in preventing cord damage, while also minimizing their effect on the POCUS machine's use and maneuverability. 4 guards cost less than $20 in total to make. Now, POCUS systems are ubiquitous in academic emergency departments, the chaotic environment within the ED test equipment durability daily, and cord damage can lead to exposed cables that may pose a shocking hazard to patients and staff. Equipment failure leads to costly delays in the proper management and disposition of patients, and overall, our cheap and effective solution helped to decrease cord damage within our ED. Thank you so much, and I hope you learned something in this. Have a good day.